All right, welcome to Notes 10.3 Part 2. So again, what we were doing is just practicing what the y value will be if I plug in a certain x value, right? This is all a function. Y is dependent on what x is. So you can call x the independent variable and y the dependent variable. So let's write that down. X is the independent variable, because it doesn't really matter what I plug in for it, and y is determined by what x is. So what y is the dependent variable. It relies on what x is. So for this problem, if I plug in 6, y is equal to, be very careful. Now I'm plugging in for x, not negative x. So I put a negative sign and then I put my parentheses 6, right? So in essence, I'm plugging in a 6, but this is really becoming negative 6, right? So this becomes negative 6 minus 2 or plus negative 2, which is negative 8. So the y output is negative 8. So my coordinate is 6, that's what I plugged in for x, comma negative 8. That's what I got for y. Let's plug in for negative 5. Now watch this. Y is equal to, put your negative sign down because it already is a negative x, negative. Now put your parentheses, negative 5 minus 2. Big difference here, right? Because a negative times a negative is going to make that a positive 5 minus 2, or plus negative 2, which gives you 3. So when x is negative 5, y becomes 3. So it's negative 5, comma 3. So y is equal to negative, and then plug in again, negative 2 minus 2. So negative becomes positive 2 minus 2, which is equal to 0. Again, it's okay to get 0, right? So the y output is 0. Your points are negative 2, comma 0. Right? And now if I plug in 0 here, we get y is equal to negative, plug in a 0. There's no such thing as negative 0, so you can basically ignore it. Minus 2. So 0 minus 2 or plus negative 2 gives you negative 2. So there's a negative there, sorry. So negative 2. So you're 0, comma negative 2. Again, you can choose any 2 points you want for this to find the slope. So the slope that I found was 6, negative 8, and negative 5, 3. You could have chosen any points you want. I did negative 8 minus 3 over 6 minus negative 5, and I got negative 11 over positive 11, which is negative 1. All right. Let's go down one more. All right, so y equals 1/2 x plus 7. So we're going to plug in, but this time we're just going to be taking half of that. So y is equal to 1/2 of 4 plus 7. Well, what is half of 4? Basically, you could use your calculator to say 4 divided by 2 is 2 plus 7. So that's 9. So your coordinate is 4, comma 9, right? Half of 4, or 4 divided by 2, gives you 2. All right, so then y is equal to 1/2 of 6 plus 7. What's half of 6, or 6 divided by 2? That's 3 plus 7. So your output this time is 10. And you have 6, comma 10. Y is equal to, what's 1/2 of negative 2 plus 7? Well, half of 2 is just 1, right? Because 2 divided by 2 is 1. So half of negative 2 is going to be negative 1 plus 7. So negative 1 plus 7 gives you 6. So negative 2, comma 6. And then what's half of 0? Well, you can't take half of 0, right? So anything times 0 is just going to be 0. So that's just going to be 0 plus 7, which is just 7. So output 0, comma 7. The slope, I decided to use 4, comma 9 and 6, comma 10. I did, in fact, I like keeping stuff positive, so I'll do it backwards. 10 minus 9 over 6 minus 4. Right? As long as I start with this one, I got to start with that one on the bottom. So I got 1 over 2 as my slope. If you did it the other way, you might have gotten negative 1 over negative 2, but negative divided by negative is still a positive. And lastly, we have negative 2/3. Now, interestingly, this negative sign applies just to one of these numbers. And so we could say y is equal to, I like putting it up top, negative 2 over 3 times 6 plus 5. And this is important, so I'm going to shoot this out and kind of blow this up right here. Negative 2 over 3 times 6. Well, really that means times 6 over 1. Get it in your head that when you see this fraction times a whole number like this, you just do 2 times 6 and then divide by 3. 2 times 6 is 12, divided by 3 is 4, right? This gives you 12 over 3, which is 4, right? But that's just the really long way of saying, hey, 2 times 6 is 12, divided by 3, 4. So it's 4 plus 5, which is 9. So your coordinate is 6, 9. Let's do another one. Y is equal to negative 2/3 times, oops, and I messed up. You know how I messed up? Because this was a negative 4, because it's negative 2 times 6, which is negative 12, divided by 3 is negative 4, my fault. So this actually changes this whole thing. It's 1, and your y output is 6, 1. So negative 2 times negative 6 this time, since we have two negatives plus 5, that will actually give us a positive 4 this time, plus 9, and that will actually give us an output of 9, so 6, 9. Y is equal to negative 2/3 times 3 plus 5. Well, 2 times 3, negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. Negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2. So negative 2 plus 5 gives you output of 3. So it's 3, 3. And then 0, we know, basically you should love it when I ask you to plug in 0, because anything times 0 is going to be 0. So that's just negative 2/3 times 0 is just 0 plus 5, which gives you the output of 5. So 0, 5. So in slope, you can just use 6, 1, and you could use something like negative 6, comma 9. And we can do 9 minus 1 over negative 6 minus 6, which is plus a negative, which gives you 8. Plus a negative gives you negative 12. And then if you simplify this, dividing by 4, you get 2 over negative 3, or negative 2/3. An interesting fact, you will know if you've gotten the right answer on this stuff for slope if your slope matches this. Oh, hopefully you recognize, oh, negative 2/3, negative 2/3. What about this one? Oh, 1/2, 1/2. What about the top one? Oh, negative x, which is really like negative 1, negative 1. So interesting, we're going to learn that this is called the slope-intercept formula, where this number, where this variable mx plus b represents the slope. And so you could just literally look here in this equation to say, oh, this is the slope of this equation, and you wouldn't have to calculate it all. All right, that's it for part 2.